This is new news. As of, I think about 2 weeks ago, we've now gone over $2 million returned to constituents in North Florida. So certainly has been a priority of mine and something we're very, very proud of. And thank you so much. Thank you for your kind words and introduction. Before I start, I just want to say, before I start my remarks, how honored I am to be here today. I was so excited when I was invited to attend, and I've been looking forward to today for a long time, and I've worked very hard on these remarks so that y'all can get a feel of where my heart is about Florida and where my concerns are for Florida. So thank you. Okay, I said all that. Okay. Who here knows Jim Stevenson? Oh my God, he has many, many, many friends here today. And y'all who know him know that he says, Florida springs will not protect themselves. Those who know and love them must protect them. I believe he was speaking about all of you when he said that. So again, I want to thank you for gathering here today, and I want to give special thanks to Bob Knight. Where is Bob? Hey, Bob. For organizing this summit, and again for inviting me to speak. Thank you. I was born in South Florida, and I don't want to date myself, but growing up, we still called it Miami. I was a cowgirl. I rode my horse everywhere, and I even leashed her up to the 7-Eleven. I would leash my horse to the tree and go in and get a Slurpee. When I was just 3 years old, my father was first elected to the state legislature. And many of my earliest memories of my dad are him driving our station wagon. I have 3 younger sisters. And we would all load up into the station wagon. One of those station wagons with that beautiful wood paneling. Does everybody remember that? And we would drive from Miami to Tallahassee, stopping along the way. And for those of y'all who know my father, you know how much he loves the Florida environment. So he has worked to instill that love in his 4 daughters. And I had my first experience and exposure to the springs driving across the state. We visited Silver Springs for a glass bottom boat tour. Manatee Springs, we learned about William Bartram's Florida expedition. And we even went on a detour to Weeki Wachee to see the mermaids. I know that was one work day that Dad always wanted to do. As a mermaid. Y'all know what the work days are? They're a tradition that my dad started and that I'm proud to continue. And I'll tell you, the day that I did the job as a housekeeper in a hotel in Panama City, those carpets had never been cleaner. I was very diligent. But my favorite was always the Ocala Springs. Have y'all been to Ocala Springs? Who here has been to Ocala Springs in North Florida? We'd run in terror from Old Joe, the 11-foot stuffed alligator in the lobby. We'd bellow out the Tarzan call and hold tight as we jumped off the very tallest diving board, and we'd marvel at Henry, the pole vaulting fish. As an adult, I decided to make my home in Tallahassee, and I have raised my 3 children there. And like my parents before me, I have taken them to Ocala Springs. They too ran from Old Joe. They have jumped off the high dive, and they marveled at Henry. Florida families like mine have been enjoying Ocala and the springs around our state for generations. But today, like I know many of you in this room, I worry about the next generation. My future grandchildren, of which I'm waiting for, and great-grandchildren, and whether or not they'll be able to enjoy our springs and other natural treasures. And I worry that they won't. We are all so lucky in this room. We know the wonder and joy and natural benefits our springs provide. But the springs will not protect themselves. It's our responsibility to ensure that they're here for future generations of all Floridians to enjoy. So this past spring, I did a work day on the Ocala Springs, testing water quality with Jim Stevenson, Madeline Carr, volunteers, and park rangers. On my work day at Ocala Springs, Joe was still in the lobby. Children were still jumping off of the high dive, though they don't have it as high as it used to be because of insurance reasons, dropped it down. And Henry, he may have been pole vaulting, but sadly, we couldn't see him. The water that had been a clear bowl of light since I was a little girl, and for thousands of years before that, was brown and murky. Instead of running on a regular schedule, it is only once in a while that the glass-bottom boats depart. Nutrients from septic tanks, fertilizers, and city runoff have clouded the once pristine waters. Now, I'm sure many of you have been to Lily Springs off the Santa Fe River and visited one of our state's most treasured naturalists, Naked Ed. My husband has a Naked Ed shirt. He wears it all the time. If Bruce Ritchie, yes, Bruce, I'm giving you a call out, or Nathan, or one of the other journalists that are here, were to write a book on eccentric Florida men, I would suggest Ed be your cover shot. But beneath his eccentricities and beneath his loincloth is a big heart, a huge heart, that cares about our state springs. And at his wilderness outpost, you can literally see the decline of our springs by looking at his dock. Where he originally built his hut at the water's edge 30 years ago, the dock now stands above the spring's waterline. And we see this repeated at springs all across our wonderful state. And here in Ocala, at Silver Springs, there's an ongoing discussion between opening the park up for more recreation, which would create economic benefits, and protecting the spring's sensitive environment. Both sides have merit. The challenge comes with finding the right balance. Florida springs aren't the only water suffering in our state. They're just one symptom of a much, much larger disease. This summer, the nation saw photos of blue-green algae clogging the Indian River Lagoon. The toxic algae has caused massive fish kills, and it's making humans sick as well. At the same time the algae was blooming, DEP officials lowered water quality standards. And right now, just 2 hours south of us, a sinkhole that could be as huge as 700 feet deep is leaking contaminated water into the ground, potentially polluting the aquifer our springs stem from. The Department of Environmental Protection kept the massive sinkhole secret for weeks, and it was only after the press publicly disclosed it that it was told to the public that lives around the sinkhole. The governor is now saying his own handpicked DEP secretary, John Steverson, didn't even tell him about the sinkhole. I find that incompetence unbelievable, and Floridians deserve full accountability. I'm really proud to say that my office has helped apply pressure to the governor, which has caused him to change rules regarding transparency and public disclosure of environmental accidents. Yeah. I know the challenges I've described aren't news to all of y'all in the room. You're the experts in this field. And most of them aren't new challenges. We've been facing them for years. Many of these issues first gained prominence when my father was governor. And I'm proud to say that he's always been and will continue to fight for our environment, including being a founding member of the Florida Conservation Coalition, a fierce defender of our springs and environment. So it all started in the 1980s when Dad spearheaded the Save Our Coast, Save Our Rivers, and Save Our Everglades programs. And while he was the first governor to champion environmental protections, Protecting Florida's natural treasures has been a bipartisan effort since then. Governor Martinez initiated Preservation 2000, the country's largest land acquisition program at the time. Governor Childs laid the groundwork for the Florida Forever Act, and then Governor Bush signed into law, and Jeff also created the Florida Springs Task Force, which I believe we need to renew. And Governor Chris supported buying land south of Lake Okeechobee to restore the Everglades River of Grass. For decades, support for Florida's environment knew no party affiliation. But unfortunately, we don't see that same level of support in our state's current administration. I believe in putting people before politics. And I've made a name for myself in Congress because I do just that. And I'll work with anyone, regardless of party, if they have a good idea. So I will give credit where credit is due. And I recognize the governor and legislature have increased spending for Springs. This is a positive step, but I have a serious concern over how the money is being spent and transparency. Just spending money isn't enough to save our springs. We need to have accountability over how those funds are being used. And this new funding wasn't done in a vacuum. At the same time, they passed a water bill written by the industries that have a special interest in them that purposely weaken environmental protections. The governor's DEP has appointed and has supported privatizing to lead our management boards, our water management boards. And they've completely ignored the will of the voters who overwhelmingly passed Amendment 1 funds. It makes me sad. It makes me very sad that Governor Scott has spoiled our long tradition of bipartisan support for the environment. He may be the first governor in modern times to be remembered for actively working to harm Florida's environment. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see a change of heart from this governor in the next 2 years. But I am a very positive person, and I do believe that we can get our state back on track. This means we need the Department of Environmental Protection to actually work with conservationists again. And we need conservationists to work with the state's industry and developers. And we need to get Republicans and Democrats working in Tallahassee again. Together. They need to work together. And we must work together. Because our springs are mysterious. But the answers for protecting them aren't. You all have studied our springs. You've documented their decline. You know what the problems are. And we know what many of the solutions are. So now I'd like to focus on some of the positive things that this governor could do today. It's Saturday, yes, we can work on Saturday. Or our state's next governor, whoever she may be. In her first year. First, we need a special session solely focused on protecting and restoring our waters. I called for a special session. I'm trying to help the governor out. I told him what he needs to do. He's just not taking my advice. I called for a special session at the height of this summer's algae crisis. The images of the guacamole-thick algae covering our waterways and beaches was heartbreaking for every Floridian. The outrage and political will exists in this state. We just need to focus on it. And I believe that a special session would do that. Second, we need to restore the integrity of our state's water management districts. I know there are some district employees and board members here today, and I want to thank you for your public service and your hard work. But in his first year, Governor Scott, a little slip there, Governor Scott cut the district budgets by almost $1 billion. Then he filled their boards with political appointees who had no experience in water management, no experience in planning, no experience in conservation. In the private industry, a construction company would never place a biologist in charge of building an apartment building. Our government shouldn't place a developer in charge of protecting our water. It's all about common sense, right? That's kind of. Third, the governor must work with the legislature and local governments to clean up and replace failing septic systems. Now that the Florida Chamber of Commerce has endorsed the idea, Governor Scott said he's considering a proposal on this issue. We need to go big and institute a statewide program to address septic tanks. Fourth, the governor and legislature must spend Amendment 1 dollars the way the voters intended them to be spent. When he approved the legislature's budget, the governor allowed $240 million to be diverted from land acquisition to general revenue. Let me repeat that, $240 million. Those funds should be used to purchase environmentally sensitive lands, to protect our springs, and to help restore the river of grass. Lastly, and I believe this is the most important point, we must reverse the corrosive culture that's taken over at the Department of Environmental Protection. I believe the vast amount of employees at the DEP work there because they care about protecting our environment. But on my work day at Ocala Springs, I saw firsthand park rangers who talked to me, who said that they were completely demoralized. DEP banned the term climate change, one of the greatest threats to our state's environment. They've lowered water quality standards. They've kept a giant toxic sinkhole secret from the public. And the DEP wouldn't even let their own scientists attend this summit. I'm ashamed when I hear Floridians say DEP stands for Don't Expect Protection or Department of Environmental Pollution. And the governor should be ashamed too. The buck stops at his desk. We must all use our power as citizens to force change in Tallahassee. We need to mobilize every Floridian who cares about springs to advocate for their protection with elected and appointed officials whose decisions impact the fates of our springs. It is our job to educate, inspire, and make sure these officials see and understand the gems will be lost if we do not act. There is no time like the present. On November 8th, y'all hear we have a little election coming up? I don't know, it's been in the news a little bit. On November 8th, Florida will choose members of the Florida Senate and the Florida House of Representatives. We have the opportunity and we must educate those potential lawmakers on why our springs are so valuable. They will never pay closer attention and be more open to education than they will be over the next 6 weeks. Let's make sure that all of those new legislators in Tallahassee have a clear understanding of what springs are and why they need to be protected for future generations of Floridians. Now, I know we face great challenges, but I am the eternal optimist, always glass half full. 8 years of destruction isn't quite enough to undo 30 years of progress. I believe we can get conservationists and business leaders around a table and find real solutions to protect our state's environment because it's in everyone's best interest. Florida isn't the best place to live just because we have low taxes. It's not the best place for businesses just because we have less regulation. Florida is the best state to live in because of our way of life. And it's the very heart of that is our environment and our water. That's the way it is today, and that's the way it was 70 years ago when just up the road from here in Cross Creek, Marjorie Keenan Rawlings wrote, let me see if I can get through this. The earth may be borrowed, but not bought. It may be used, but not owned. Reading that quote and thinking about our springs, I was worried I wouldn't be able to get through it because I do get emotional. This isn't just policy, it's personal. I'll always remember my first swim in a spring, and I do want to make sure that those grandchildren, I hope come soon, will be able to swim in those same springs. The springs aren't going to protect themselves, but at this summit, as I look around this room, I know we have the scientists, conservationists, political leaders, and the will to restore our springs and protect our water. So please keep fighting, because together we can protect them for generations to come. We are tenants and not possessors, lovers and not masters. Our springs belong to the wind and the rain, to the sun and the seasons, to the cosmic secrecy of seed, and beyond all, to time. Thank you. God bless each of you, and God bless the state of Florida. Honored to represent North Florida in Congress, and I am going to work as hard as I can every day. A responsibility that I love, representing the people of North Florida. And after my term ends, which some of y'all may know what happened in my district, I may be the only Democrat left in what is now my district. District 2 got redistricted to a very, very Republican district. But anyway, back to your question. After that, and after I have a chance to sort of make sure that we're moving forward and everything's in the right place, I'll make a decision.
Hi, I'm Katie Tripp with Save the Manatee Club. We're obviously a big fan of your dad, who co-found us.
We're going to get Jimmy Buffett back and get his schooling here.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you, because you work so well, as you said, on both sides of the fence, what is your best piece of advice or your foundation that really allows you to do that? Because that can certainly be a very challenging thing to do.
Thank you. What's your first name again?
My name's Katie.
Katie, thank you, Katie. And thank you for what you do with Save Our Manatees, because it's so important. It's who and what I am. I can completely disagree with someone and still like them. And we need a whole lot more of that. And it's the ability to disagree and yet find a way to work together that has allowed me to get a lot done as a freshman member of the minority party. I was talking to Dad the other night, and we worked real hard with the president to get a disaster declaration for North Florida after the hurricane came through. And Dad said, he goes, I'm just so amazed, Gwen, at all you've done. But you know what Dad's more amazed about? Because he started seeing the transition from what was truly public service and working together with members on both sides of the aisle to a more polarizing political environment. I have so many good friends. When I first got to Congress, I made a point of, there's an app on my phone, it's called Congress. They searched long and hard to come up with that name. But it gives you, it's like a Facebook for members of Congress, their face and then where they're from. And I would just, every night I would go to bed, I would look at this until I got to know everybody's first name. And it's very nice to be able to sit on the floor or walk through the halls and say, hi, and know their name. And it's part of what even Governor Scott, he could write, he's probably not real happy with me right now, but if I saw him, I would give him a hug. I think that's important in life, and we need a whole lot more of that, and it's something we desperately need in Tallahassee. It's going to allow us to have a government, a state government that works again. Bruce, Richie, did you get that about the hug for the governor? He loves it when I talk to him. I have a wonderful relationship with all the press, and they just love me, don't you, Bruce? And there's other press members here too. I don't want to leave any gone. Who's next?
Right here.
Yes.
What was your take on the fracking bill?
I strongly believe that there's absolutely prohibit fracking in Florida. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, our geological makeup, I mean, look what's happening with this sinkhole. We should not be drilling into our limestone foundations. Our aquifer would be at risk. And I work with Bill Nelson to be co-sponsors of a bill prohibiting fracking.
I guess what I was wondering was the study aspect. Many of us feel like we don't need to regulate something that's banned. There's no reason to do a study if we're not going to allow it. So I was just wondering, what your take was on the study aspect. Many of us just, like you said, don't want it at all.
Right.
Thank you. We have another question on this side.
What are your thoughts about reinstituting DCA?
The Department of
Community Affairs.
Absolutely. Growth management is something, we see it all around us, and we need to, I worry about, has anyone seen the study that in the next 20 years or 30 years that how much more development there's going to be in Florida? If that's going to be the case, we need to have an agency that is overseeing that and making sure it's done well. There's all kinds of acronyms in my world. No, it's okay. I didn't know.
Anyone else? Here we go.
Do you have a position on, excuse me, Georgia Pacific's plan to build a 40 million gallon a day pipeline to the Big Bend area?
Is that the Sable Palm?
No, it is a pulp and paper one owned by Georgia Pacific and Perry. And they have a DEP permit right now, but not a core permit, to build a 40 million gallon a day pipe to the Gulf of Mexico to discharge their very toxic waste.
Has it been approved?
By DEP, but the Corps is considering their permit now,
Okay.
and that's still pending.
Well, I would very much appreciate sitting down with you and talking about that more. Brian in the back is with my team. He spends more time with me than any one young man should ever have to. Can you please get us more information about that? Because I have not been briefed on that, and I would like to understand so I can talk to the Corps about it.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay.
Hey.
My name is Maria Vandevansky, and I would like to know what is your position regarding locking us into the fossil fuel industry by allowing pipelines such as the Sable Trail pipeline and the Southeast Connection pipeline, which are going from Oklahoma City or Oklahoma, the state, down to Juno Beach, where there is the storage for the gas there, the liquid natural gas. The Sierra Club is fighting for the ending of fossil fuels, and in the state of Florida, where I moved in '79, we were already looking at solar energy with what Carter did at the time. So what is your position on this, please?
Well, the Sable Palm pipeline, I believe, is in its last stages of permitting, unfortunately. There's been a lengthy legal fight over the permitting process. I do believe that we need to have a multifaceted energy policy. Natural gas is a cleaner energy. I understand it's a fossil fuel energy, and I understand the challenges with that. So right now, we're at the stage with the Sable Palm pipeline. We've got to make sure that it's built. If it's going to be built, that it's built with all the environmental protections that any pipeline should be built with.
But there have been many incidents that Spectra Energy has went through with the Spectra Energy. They are not really doing the best in terms of security and safety for the people.
Well, that's what we need to hold them accountable to do. Because if it's going to be built, then we need to make sure it's being done to protect the people who are going to have to, would be subjected to any spills or any pipeline issues that have developed.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question over here.
I'm familiar with Sable Palm, but Sable Trail.
Sable Trail. Sable Palm is actually an elementary school in Tallahassee.
Probably not the same thing, although
No, they're not the same thing. Thank you for correcting me.
they do pick these fabulous names. People think it's a hiking trail. It's not.
Do you think there's some intention in that?
There might be. DEP, back when they were actually opposed to it, sent to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission a map showing a red line of where Sable Trail wanted to go through, right through the most vulnerable area of the Floridan aquifer. But FERC chose to ignore that, also several independent geology reports. And even more interesting from my point of view is FPL's excuse for this pipeline in 2013 was Florida needs more electricity. But if you look at this year's 2016 10-year plan from FPL, it says, boldface, right in the executive summary, Florida needs no new electricity until 2024. So why is that pipeline being built, and what will you do to stop it?
Okay, I'm gonna let you all in. I've known about that pipeline for a long time. We've been fighting it and addressing it. But I do believe, unfortunately, that it's already been, I think we're at the last stages of approval. You need to have a stronger recognition of some of the potential challenges that pipelines can prevent and provide. But on the other hand, at this point, I really do think that we've got to just make sure that if it's going to be built, that it's built with all the environmental protections that we need to have, the most state-of-the-art pipeline that could be built. I wish I could say that I thought we could turn it around, but I'm going to be straight with you. I'm always going to be straight with you. I think we're past that point. Does anyone disagree? I mean, does anyone disagree? Why do you disagree?
We all disagree.
Why?
My name is Marilyn Malwitz-Gibson. I am with the Sierra Club, and I've been fighting this for over 3 years of my life. And Sierra Club actually came to the forefront and brought 2 lawsuits, one against the Army Corps of Engineers that did issue the permit. The permit's already done. So it is being built as we speak today. In fact, they build all the way up until 6 or 7 in the evening on the weekends. This thing is going in so fast. It's because we are at their heels trying to stop it. We need congressional leadership to stop it at the FERC level. We filed another, the lawsuit against the Army Corps of Engineers in the 11th Circuit Court in Atlanta was denied. Simply stated denied. No reasoning, no nothing. The next lawsuit that Sierra Club filed was against the FERC. And so this one actually is about climate justice, because these energy infrastructures that we're seeing in the United States are contributing to our climate impacts that we're seeing globally. And so we feel strongly congressional leadership, again, can stop it, but you have to have the voice. We can't. Many of these people in this room have already tried really hard for years doing what we're supposed to be doing, going to the meetings, writing the comments, being an intervener. And here we are. I go and I drive the countryside and I see where they're working. They're working at every point location.
And we had to actually fight because there's an area on the farm that has been when my uncle passed away and my cousin passed away, it's where we sprinkled their ashes. And we had to fight to make sure that they didn't take that pipeline right through that area. So, y'all, I have a very personal interest in this. And I have been attempting to do whatever I can without looking like I'm self-serving. Okay?
Thank you. Another question?
Yeah, if I could just follow up with Mary Lee, we're colleagues with the Sierra Club.
Do you have a question?
I do. So you talked about working across the aisle with folks of of both parties. What we need and what we'd like you to do is to go to to the Florida delegation and make it clear that this isn't over until it's over, and we're not giving up. And we want our congressional delegation not to give up. And what can be done is you can use your influence. I'm not talking about a legislative vote, but use your influence both with the Corps and with FERC. You can send comments to the FERC and influence them, ask them to do the right thing. The Corps could withdraw its permits. That's not unheard of. It doesn't happen very often, but it could happen. And so we are really looking for leadership from our congressional delegation to do that, to put that kind of pressure on both the Corps and FERC. And we look to you, Gwen, to lead that effort.
Okay, I give you my word. I'm a person of my word. When I get back to Washington, I will talk with all the members of the Florida delegation and see what we can do, and I will do that.
And if you,
Excuse me. Do you have a question?
I have to make this very profound statement, and it has to do with the cross barge canal. If you think it can't be stopped, all you have to do is think of that. Thank you.
And help get some funding back to them so that we can help them do a better job of protecting our water.
Okay, and the same theme of potentially self-serving. Make sure that after this election in 2016, that everyone stays engaged, because there is no more important election for the future of the state that we love than the gubernatorial election in 2018. And we have got to elect someone that loves and cares and just wants to do what's right for this state. And that means having people on the water management boards that actually care about water quality. And it's going to take the new governor to make sure that the folks that are there that shouldn't have no business being there are replaced with people that will do what's right for water quality in Florida.
One more question, and we're going to wrap this up.
How are you?
My first name's John, by the way.
Hey, John. I know I stopped asking everyone's name. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No problem.
I apologize. What's your name?
Chris.
Chris and
Marilyn.
Mary Lee.
You've heard from me before. I sent you a copy of the letter, and that's going to be my question. But first, I'm president of Walls Watershed Coalition. We're the waterkeeper affiliate for the Upper Suwannee River. One of our members in Suwannee County, she spread her grandmother's ashes on her land. Kind of similar to the situation you're talking about. And there's no secret about this. She testified about this in a legal case that we brought against DEP and Sable Trail. We lost. Okay, so where did Sable Trail start construction? Right there. They've already bulldozed her grandmother's ashes. Now, my question to you is, you have, or your staffers have, a copy of the letter that Walls is one of the almost 200 organizations throughout the country in 35 states, written by a Delaware riverkeeper, asking for Congress to rein in the rogue agency of FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. My question is, will you help do that?
To rein in FERC?
Yes.
My gosh. I certainly want to make sure that the decisions and what I advocate for will be a positive voice for issues that are of challenge to Florida and to our country. So I'm going to be, do you have another copy of the letter that you wrote so that I could have it in my hand?
Get it to you.
That would be awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. John, right?
Yes.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for that, and Gwen, thank you.